Hola a todos, soy Naomi y estoy emocionada de presentarles mi casa, que es su casa, la librería Casa Norberto. Quiero darles la bienvenida a este acogedor espacio literario. Aquí tenemos una amplia variedad de libros para todos los gustos, desde las novedades hasta los clásicos. Estamos seguros de que encontrarás algo que te cautivará. Y eso no es todo, también tenemos artículos espectaculares como marcadores de libros, variedad de tazas, cubiertas para libros y hasta fabulosos cuadros. Además, si tienes niños pequeños, tenemos libros interactivos diseñados especialmente para ellos. Aprenderán y disfrutarán al mismo tiempo. Y si necesitas un momento para relajarte, no dudes en visitar nuestro acogedor café. Nuestros postres y chocolates son deliciosos. Y no quiero que te pierdas las emocionantes presentaciones de libros y actividades que tenemos todas las semanas. Para estar al tanto, síguenos en nuestras redes sociales en Facebook e Instagram. Así es que ya lo sabes, ven a Casa Norberto en el tercer nivel de Plaza Las Américas, donde los libros y la diversión se encuentran. Te esperamos con los brazos abiertos.
Probando. Buenas noches y bienvenidos a Casa Norberto. Hoy tendremos la presentación del libro The Pain We Carry, por su autora Natalie Gutiérrez. La acompaña Angelina Villapiano, quien estará a cargo de los comentarios del libro. Los invitamos a que nos sigan en las redes sociales como Casa Norberto para que conozcan las actividades culturales que ofrecemos semanalmente. Le pediremos por favor poner los celulares en modo silencio o vibración para así evitar interrupciones. Gracias por su atención.
Gracias. Bienvenido. 1, 2, 3. Ok. Bienvenidos a todos, a todes, a todas. Esta presentación va a ser en inglés y el Spanglish, ¿verdad? Porque yo, como mucha gente en la diáspora, nos creemos en un tiempo donde, ¿cómo se dice? En un tiempo que era más aceptable hablar en inglés. Y en esos tiempos, porque yo me crié en los 1980s, yo escuché mucho de, don't speak Spanish, we're in America. Y en Nueva York, we had to assimilate. So a lot of the impacts, this is what we're going to be talking about today, a lot of the impact of racismo, of el colonialismo. It has impacts. And one of the ways it has impacts is through the loss of language, even though Spanish language is also part of the colonizing language as well. There is a part of me, even as I say that has a lot of grief around. Yo puedo comunicarme y me puedo defenderme, ¿verdad? Pero que no lo hablo perfecto. Y eso me da tristeza porque tengo mucha familia aquí en Puerto Rico y quiero hablar con ellos en una manera con fluidez y a veces se me hace difícil. So I just want to name that because that is the part of the impacts of racism and colonialism and the assimilation that we have to do for folks that are from the diaspora that didn't grow up here, in Puerto Rico, and there's impact there. So I just want to name that. And I'm trying to think what else I want to say. I'm just happy and I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to be in conversation with Angelina Villapiano, who's just an amazing person who does a lot of, and Angelina, you'll introduce yourself, who does a lot of work with amplifying stuff, issues that are happening aquí en Puerto Rico in our community, and does it in a way where she brings light and humor to real issues that are happening on the island. So thank you for being here with me. Muchas gracias.
Gracias a ti. Hola, saludos. Soy Angelina. Mi nombre en las redes es Miss Angelina. Yo también me crié en New Jersey, soy de la diáspora también. Y en mi casa no hablaba español. Mi mamá y mi titi y mi abuela estaba hablando entre like, ellas como que, ay, podemos hablar en español y los niños lo van a entender. Eso es perfecto porque podemos hablar y ellos no saben nada. Por eso no sabía nada de español, pero yo aprendí poco a poco. Y sí, es una vergüenza, en verdad, para mí. Me sentí una vergüenza que no podría hablar en español. Y todavía, ahora yo puedo hablar, pero tengo un acento, no es perfecto. Y todavía me siento como que, ay, Dios mío, no estoy hablando correctamente y no puedo hablar en español. Y mi acento. Es un, no sé, es like a rift en nuestra comunidad, me siento, porque la verdad es el idioma es importante para comunicarnos, para entendernos, es parte de nuestra identidad como boricua, nuestro acento boricua es parte de nuestra identidad, ¿me entiendes? So, if you're speaking Spanish, but you don't have the right boricua accent, tú no eres boricua. So it's part of this whole colonization side effects that does cause tension, it causes shame, it causes separation. And yeah, it's something to work through for sure. It has been for me and continues to be for me over the years. So, but anyways, aside from that, I am a comedian, I'm an actress, I'm a content creator, I'm a dancer, I do a lot in the arts, and I try to find ways to talk about our identity and our culture through comedy and performing.
Thank you, family. There's as you were talking, ya como I was just thinking about all the things that I want to say, y que solamente tenemos una hora. And how do you cover such a big topic en solamente una hora? Es difícil, pero también esto es una conversación que sigue. This is an ongoing conversation. This is meant to be an ongoing conversation because it's such an important conversation. I don't have my first book here. Bienvenido. Gracias por venir. Oh, yes, perfect. Thank you. So, yo escribí este libro en el 2000, bueno, lanzó en el 2022, en 2022. So, va a cumplir 3 años. And I wrote this book because yo hace 16 o 17 años que trabajo con sobrevivientes de trauma, y puede ser trauma sexual, trauma generacional, trauma histórico, ancestral, trauma del desplazamiento, trauma del racismo. And como terapeuta de trauma, yo vi que cuando estamos hablando mucho de la tema de trauma, especially como attachment trauma, que es como trauma de apegamiento, that we only talk about trauma or attachment trauma from the lens of mis padres no hicieron esto, me abandonaron, or they neglected me, but we don't really understand like the full picture of the why, right? Y lo que yo vi trabajando en mental health, in community mental health, was people would come to the clinics and people would say, oh, esta persona tiene ansiedad, o esta persona tiene depresión, o esta persona tiene schizophrenia, o tiene bipolar, and le dieron como mucho de estos diagnosis, without really fully understanding the whole picture, right? Why were they anxious? Why were they anxious? Is it because they were about to lose their home? Is it because they didn't have enough money to pay their rent and they needed to put food on their table, on their family's table? Is it because they is it because anxiety not only existed within them but was something that was generational, that was something that was experienced throughout the family, throughout the lineages, right? So is this do you hear me? Okay. Like, I don't hear myself. Um, is this anxiety? Is this depression? Is it just ours? Or does it come from people that came long before us? Right. And I would see, especially with complex post traumatic stress, people understood complex post traumatic stress just as um, attachment trauma. But our families didn't just wake up, our parents or caregivers didn't just wake up and decide, I want to be bad parents, right? Usually it doesn't start off that way. I don't know every parent in the world, but usually it doesn't start off that way. And we find out a lot of the time that the los cargo that our parents carry comes from both systemic stuff, right? The systemic, the societal issues, but also stem from the ancestral trauma, the historical trauma that exist in our bones, that exist as blood memory, as cellular memory in our bones. And there's scientific studies that show that survivors, that our ancestors that have experienced historical trauma through genocide, through famine, through colonization, through enslavement, through just the traumas that our ancestors have experienced, that continues to manifest within us. We carry that. We carry that even in ways that we don't know, even in ways that we don't know, right? And so um, I wanted to broaden the definition, the understanding of complex trauma. I wanted us to stop having the conversations of just like, oh, it was because my parents weren't there for me, but the why. Why weren't your parents there for you? Oh, because their parents struggled too, and maybe their parents, their grandparents, their great grandparents also struggled. This is a generational piece. Can we find out the roots to that? Can we go back? Because I feel like when we know our stories and know the stories before our stories, there's space there for more compassion for ourselves and also for the people that have come before us. So that is essentially why I wrote this book, because I wanted us therapists, but also as survivors of complex trauma, to understand that these things that we carry, a lot of it, most of it, all of it, doesn't really have anything to do with like who we are, but what has been done to us, how the systems in which we exist in and how that impacts us, and also what we're carrying that is ancestral. Like right now, we are living in a time, estamos viviendo en un tiempo bien difícil. And not that it's ever been fully easy, but I work with a lot of clients that are immigrants or first gen. Y ahora mismo están sufriendo even more. Why? Because of the things that are happening right now in society. If they have parents, family members that are undocumented, and they're afraid with everything that's happening with ICE right now, that's real. Am I going to go and say this person has anxiety? Absolutely, they have anxiety. I would have anxiety. I have anxiety. And I have the privilege of, being a citizen here. I mean, I have thoughts about that, but I there is something that we need to begin to really explore that isn't just assigning diagnoses on people, but more of just a broadening to understand the why we feel the way that we do. And I find that we tend to blame ourselves for the ways that we feel rather than really trying to understand that we're not broken, that these things that we carry are things that we carry, not who we are, right? Because we aren't the burdens that we carry, right? This is not the pain that we are. This is the pain that we carry, right? The generational systemic pain that we carry. But we aren't that. And so the second book that came out this month, bueno, estamos en septiembre, entonces agosto, que lanzó en agosto, this book is talking about, it's inviting us to really reconnect with our sense of self, like who we are beneath and beyond the burdens that we carry. So I want to stop right there and just see if there's anything, Angelina, you want to share, or anyone that wants to share anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say.
Right?
I think that there are some systemic issues that I felt as a Puerto Rican person living in New Jersey. For example, my parents really wanted us to, have the American dream, and so therefore I grew up in a white neighborhood con los gringo blanco, sin puertorriqueño, en mi barrio, en los Estados Unidos, en New Jersey. So siempre me sentí como que yo no soy diferente, no sé por qué, pero yo parece poquito diferente, me suena diferente, la comida que yo como es diferente, todo poquito diferente de mis amigas, de la otra persona en mi barrio, whatever. And I remember mi abuela siempre como que, y yo con una curiosidad, como que, ¿cómo es Puerto Rico? No sé mucho de Puerto Rico, estoy en New Jersey con esa gente que son gringos y yo quiero saber más de Puerto Rico, de tu familia, qué pasó. Y mi abuela siempre como que, una actitud mal de Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, no, ese es más, es peligroso, no es una cosa bien, no quería decir nada de Puerto Rico. Y it was only many years later that I discovered it was because her father was murdered in Puerto Rico. Wow. Yeah, she never told anybody. She didn't. Wow. I was the first person in the family she told. Mm-hmm. She told my mom, mi mamá, mi titi, mi tíos, todo. Su abuelo murió en un huracán en Puerto Rico. Eso fue la historia. Pero en realidad, he was murdered in Puerto Rico. Wow. So, and then she moved to the States. So of course she had her own trauma. To her, she was a child when that happened. Yeah. So she thought, I live in this dangerous, crazy place and I'm getting out of here and I'm not going back. That's a crazy place over there. And of course she thought that she was a child, So anyway, tying into how that affects the generations, she had her childhood trauma from realities of being a poor little girl in Puerto Rico. That translated into her life, which then she raised her kids like, I know, somos en los Estados Unidos, somos gringos, más o menos. My mom and my family was encouraged to speak English, to make American friends. My mom and my aunt married American men, like todo eso. So, y yo como like the third generation or whatever, second generation, como que, mira, pero ¿por qué? Soy puertorriqueño, quiero saber más de Puerto Rico, mi cultura, mi gente y todo esto. And I didn't understand why my family had removed us so far away from it for so long. And so me moving here to Puerto Rico years later, me mudé acá a la isla y fue una jornada para mí personalmente como que, wow, por fin ahora yo entiendo como quién son mi gente, de dónde soy, pero también a whole new world of trauma opened up when I was like, oh, diantre. Puerto Rico está carón, es bien difícil aquí por mucha gente. Y wow, no sabía nada de la vida en Puerto Rico. Y después de años aquí en Puerto Rico, yo tengo mi propia trauma de aquí, porque es difícil vivir en Puerto Rico, en la realidad, es difícil. You're always in survival mode here. Like, I feel like people don't have a chance to just like relajarte, porque siempre hay algo, siempre hay algo. Es la luz, es el agua, es el político, es esto, el fucking gobierno de Puerto Rico, gobierno de los Estados Unidos, a una huracán, like, muchas cosas, bien difícil. So there's like niveles y so many layers for all of us, in different generations and different places within where we're at, you know.
That is so, Angelina, I really appreciate you saying that because it is so real, ¿verdad? Y después, not only is all of that, everything that Angelina just said, but do we even talk about it? Do we even talk about it? Right? Porque I could probably count maybe on two hands. I feel like now more people are like going to therapy, right? Pero I mean, you don't even really need to talk about to go to therapy. I mean, therapy is great, right? But it's not always affordable. And there's all this, there's situations around access to it. But even just talking about it in general, I feel like we don't talk about things. Solamente como lo aguantamos. It's part of the pain we carry, right? But it's also what I learned in writing this book, the first and the second, is that the pain that we carry is really the grief we carry. And the grief that we hold, some of it is similar and some of it is different, right? But there's so much grief that we carry in our bodies that needs our tending to. And I don't know about y'all, but it's hard for me to even, como terapeuta, también estar con mi pérdida. Right? It is hard because we have to be with the vulnerability within us, that everything that comes up around everything. Like even from Angelina, when you were talking, it reminded me of this como una cosa que yo leía online que dice, my grandparents or my family, my elders moved to a different land because they wanted me to like prosper and be better. And I feel this guilt because all I want to do is go back to where they left. That's actually where I want to be. And I feel like that. Porque mis abuelos se fueron, right? They went to New York. They wanted that, that better life. And I cannot tell you how many tears we cried every time we came to Puerto Rico. To make every time we were leaving Puerto Rico, like it was just crying. I'm crying, my mom's crying, everybody's crying, just to go back to New York, right? And it's not that I love New York. New York raised me. But there is something where your body knows their roots, where your body knows home. Even if you don't speak the language, even if you don't know your ancestors, your body knows. Entonces, I have been wanting to move back to the island for a really long time. I get emotional thinking about this because I never thought it could be possible. I never thought that frustrates me to today. I never thought it could be possible. I see all these, the Blanquitos moving to Puerto Rico, and I'm like, wow, I'm getting mad at them. But I never thought I could move here. It wasn't a thing because I just felt like I could never. Who gave me that message? This is my home too. This is my home. In fact, this is my home. Period. Right? And so I had to grapple with I know it's not easy living in Puerto Rico. This is not rose-colored glasses. It's not easy. And I have a certain privilege that even my own people don't have. Even my own people don't have. And I have that privilege. And I need to, of course, use that privilege to support my people, not to save them, but to support them. Right? But I had to really like I have my kids. I have two babies. They're not babies. They're 10 and 8, but they're babies. They're my babies. And I had to decide I wanted to give them what I didn't get. And I got a lot because my mom always came and brought me to Puerto Rico. So I feel connected to Puerto Rico very much. But I also knew that there are certain things that I just don't know. That certain people, that when you're born and raised here, that you have that I will never have. And that is such a gift that I feel I've lost. And so writing this book and it being birthed here on the homeland is so meaningful to me because this feels like a reclamation. It feels like a homecoming. It feels like a reclamation of like, I'm here. We are here. And I want to do my part to help my people. I want to do my part. It's always been, my work feels like soul work for communities of color, for communities that have been marginalized, and that includes my people aquí en Puerto Rico and all over the world. But it isn't easy because there is so much. When we think about the impact, ¿verdad? Los impactos del colonialismo, de todos los cultural isms, we are grappling with that in so many ways. Historical trauma, we are grappling with that in so many ways. What I was mentioning to you before about, how many of us are comfortable with going to therapy. I'm curious if you raise your hand, how many of you are comfortable with going to therapy? Therapists, hands down. Como más o menos, a little bit, right? A little bit, yeah. But even therapists, it's difficult for us too, right? I know for me, it's hard to be vulnerable. And I, all day, every day, I'm like, let's be vulnerable, right? But then, of course, for me, I'm like, ooh, right? Because it's scary. Because it's scary to be vulnerable. Because some of the time, or a lot of the time for us, when we were vulnerable, maybe bad things happened. Or when we were in a vulnerable age, maybe bad things happened. So vulnerability, or maybe we were even teased when we were vulnerable, right? Or we were taken advantage of when we were vulnerable. So we learn a lot of negative things about vulnerability. But in actuality, vulnerability is what frees us in safe spaces. In safe spaces.
I think even just being willing to talk about your feelings is not a thing in a lot of Latino homes. Right. Not in mine, that's for sure. We didn't talk about our feelings, you know what I mean? It was like yelling or like silence. And so it does feel unsafe on some level to just be able to like say what you're feeling, my family, we're all grown adults now. Somos adultos en mi familia, pero todavía es bien difícil para mi familia comunicar entre nosotros. Es bien difícil para mi mamá hablar con mi hermano de un conflicto que está pasando entre la familia y mi mamá todavía no puede comunicar like comfortably. Ella se siente como que no quiere hablar de las cosas que son difíciles. Si es una cosa, whatever, we can talk. But if it's an actual, like, difficult conversation to have, it's not happening in my family. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's really, it's so hard to do. If you can relate to that, I want to just invite you to raise your hands or just say, yeah, it is hard, right? Yeah, it's so hard, right? Like, yeah. And I also think about what we have learned about being strong, right? We have to be strong, be strong. But what does that mean? When you have to be strong, when you have to push through something, right? Si estás enferma, si te sientes whatever it is, tenemos como ese mensaje internalizado, right? Internalized messages of being strong, especially I feel like not only in Boricua communities and Puerto Rican communities, but I think in Latinx communities, but I also feel like in general, the global majority communities of color, we have this message or these burdens of being strong, burdens of silence. No hablamos de nada, right? Like we don't go to therapy. Terapias son para los locos, right? Yo no soy loca, entonces yo no tengo que ir a terapia, porque yo no soy loca, right? There's this sense of therapy or just even talking about things being a not good thing. You don't air your dirty laundry to people, right? But then what happens to that stuff that we hold? Because that doesn't evaporate. We carry that in our bodies. And it comes out in a lot of autoimmune issues. It comes out in disease. There's a lot of cancer in our communities. And I really wonder how much stress has to do with it. And of course, the chemicals in our food that we eat and all this, so much more, right? But how much of it is also because of what we are carrying in our bodies that we have not given space or a voice to, right? Because we are so feeling like we need to be strong. We need to be strong. We need to be strong. My abuela, my grandmother passed away recently. Yesterday makes 3 months. Yesterday was the 3rd, right? Yeah, yesterday makes 3 months that she passed away. And and I remember that message even being with me when I was at her funeral. Don't cry, no te pongas así, con llorando así, con moquito, and like, don't go there. But I wanted to do it differently. I wanted to reclaim my ¿cómo se dice? My grieving of her, my mourning of her. And so I let it loose. I let it loose because I don't want to carry that in my body. I don't want to carry that in my body. And I feel like part of what is missing within us is that we're carrying so much stuff, so much grief, so much unresolved, unspoken things in our bodies, but we also don't really have the ceremonies that I feel like our ancestors once had. Grief ceremonies, rite of passages, just ceremonies in general, intention around living that I feel like our ancestors once had that we don't really have anymore, because right now we are just trying to get to our jobs to feed, to pay our bills because things are so expensive. We're not living as intentionally as we want to live. And sorry, Angelina, I know you were, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, in the topic of like having to be strong, I've never felt that more than aquí en Puerto Rico, viviendo acá en Puerto Rico, porque the buzzword is always resilient. Puerto Rican people are so resilient. Wow, they're so resilient. And it's like, nobody wants to be resilient anymore. Like, aren't we allowed to just like not be resilient? Like, why do we have to like put on a good face no matter what happens and like be so hospitable and happy and joyful and welcoming and great no matter what happens? It's exhausting. Why does everyone have to be resilient all the time? There's no space for like letting people just be soft, you know? Yeah. And I feel that like there's so that like got to be tough because the next thing's around the corner. And it's like, damn, when are you allowed to just grieve or be sad or be soft or be scared or everything else?
Yeah, right. And when you are scared, I think we even learn that from when we're younger, when we're scared or when we're crying. What is it? Like maybe it's, I'm going to give you something to cry about, right? Or don't be scared, rather than having someone be with and meet us where we are, meet us with those emotions, to be like, you're scared? Tell me about that. Tell me about why you're scared, what's happening. And a lot of the times our caregivers are unable to do that because, again, right, the societal stuff. And maybe they don't know how to do it because that wasn't what was done to them. And so there's a lot of unlearning and a lot of learning that needs to happen. But that being strong piece can feel so painful and also so isolating, because when you're strong, you don't really, a lot of the times, a lot of folks are not able to feel like they can talk to people or ask for help. I'm curious who here feels like they can ask for help. Like, if you feel like you need help with something, with anything, do you feel like you can ask for help? Más o menos, a little bit. Yeah. And sometimes, and it maybe depends on who, right? But there's something about like that I think we have been conditioned to feel like I did it, right? Or I did it by myself, or I don't need anybody I could do it myself, right? That really complicates things for us too. And again, because that being strong can really get in our way. In the same way that this burden of silence can also get in our way when we're not having these conversations with one another. It's important for me to say we can't always have these conversations everywhere, because not everyone is safe enough to have conversations with, right? But where can we have conversations where we are exploring when we're feeling anxious, when we're feeling scared, when we're feeling like, damn, like, I don't know, when we're feeling like we want to hurt ourselves? Because I think that's even a taboo topic when we're thinking about whether it's something that we are planning to do, or whether it's just a thought when we're thinking about like, I ya me quiero morir, or like, I don't want to be here, or I want to, however it comes up for you. Can we talk about it? Can we have these really vulnerable conversations? And I think that is part of the reason why I wrote these books, because I really want us to have more of these conversations. And I also really want us to begin to like excavate the burdens that we carry, so we could see who we are, like who we really are. I have a friend who is ay, Dios mío, a chaplain. June Park, he's a chaplain. He wrote a book, As Long as You Need Permission to Grieve. And one of the things that he said, his whole career is supporting people on their deathbed when they're dying. And he said the number one thing that people share is that they wish that they would have spoken up and said what they really wanted to say and be who they really are. And that made me really sad, because so many of us make it to the end of our life, whether that's in our, in elder ages, or if it's a premature death, that we can die without really knowing who we are, and instead knowing ourselves to be the burdened version of ourselves. The ones that are carrying the trauma that haven't healed, the ones who are carrying maybe perfectionism, and believe themselves to be, perfectionists, who haven't sought healing, who hasn't really like been able to just see themselves because they've been afraid to be vulnerable, who hasn't opened themselves up to love and receiving care and tenderness from other people. That worries me for us, because I want our healing. We deserve to heal, and I think a lot of us believe that we don't deserve this healing. So I want to just check in. I don't know where we are on time, and I know they said we have 15 minutes. Okay, good. So I just want to see how that lands, and if there's anything that anyone is wanting to share about that.
Hola, buenas noches. Something that when you guys were talking about just being strong, like I think especially being Latina, being so I'm first gen Bolivian immigrant, like I grew up in the States believing since I was little because I'm the first one, so the oldest. Yeah, I always have to be strong. Like I always have to be strong for my sisters. I always have to be strong for my family. Always had to, excel in school because school was the ticket to like success because my parents immigrated to this country to give us a better life, and so it's like all that is embedded in you since you're a kid. And it's just like now as an adulta to unpack that through therapy, through being in community, through books like yours, like it's just eye-opening how like it really can affect you since you were a child. And even now, like I still like there's a lot of things that I have like blocked off my childhood, and it's just like now as an adult, like even grieving that, like that's like so wild. Like now that I'm like acknowledging it and thinking about it, but it's just crazy to think like all those components lead to that. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Bianca, for sharing that because I know that you're not alone. I know that you're not alone. And I think that there's so much pressure that society is put on us, right? As people of color, as Latinas, as part of people, the global majority, there's so much pressure on having to achieve, right? And even when you think about that, what is success? What is success? Is it having all of the money and all of the houses and all of the degrees? What is success? And whose metrics are we using to measure success? Whose definition of success are we using, right? We are using, I want to say, I'll speak for myself. I have used the colonial metrics of success rather than my own. Why can't success be healing yourself? Why can't success be reclaiming your sense of self and identity and doing something that you love? Why can't success being like, I'm going to learn a different language? Why does it have to be, I made $100,000 this year, or I got my bachelor's degree, master's degree, I wrote 20 books, right? Wow. Who said that that is success? And then what does that say about our self-worth when we don't achieve those things? And that goes into this understanding of meritocracy, right? Like this belief that if you didn't make it, it's because you didn't work hard. Y nosotros sabemos que hay mucha gente en like worldwide que trabajan duro and harder than me, harder than so many of us, and don't ever get to see success. And that has nothing to do with how hard they work. Like, that has everything to do with the systems in which they exist in. Right? So I appreciate Bianca, you sharing that. I appreciate you sharing that because I know that you're not alone. I was just resonating so much with what you're saying. Because I also, and I do this to my kids, and I want to be real with you, right? Because I wrote these books, and every time I write a book, it opens up another like thing within me of oh, this is more shadow work for me to do, more healing work for me to do, because God, the universe is not done with me yet. I am still work in progress, right? But even I have had this feeling of like, I'm behind. I have my master's. I'm like, but I should have had a doctorate already. Oh my God, what am I waiting for? I have to do this. I have to learn this. I have to I have to get all the things, do all the things. And I notice that I have 2 kids, and I notice that with them, I'm like, I have this fear of like them being behind. But being behind who? Who's again, right? Like who am I trying to keep up with? And it's such, that is that internalized for me, I'm speaking for me, that has been an internalized piece of racism within me, where it's like the blanquitos, so I have to show that I'm better than them. I have to like, but why? Why? Because I just need to make sure that I'm good, right? I need to make sure that I'm learning the stuff that I want to learn because I want to learn it, because I'm living a life of intention. And me trying to keep up with the Joneses or me trying to measure up to whatever is unreal, because the truth is that a lot of, white folks have had privilege for longer than my people. And so it's wild for me to think that I'm ever going to do or to have the generational wealth that many of them have, because my ancestors were part of the reason why they got that wealth to begin with.
I think on like a macro level, I feel that way about like the relationship of Puerto Rico to the US, in the sense that because somos parte de los Estados Unidos, siempre estamos comparándonos como que, oh, well, if we were a state, we'd be the poorest state. And if this is what it costs here, and this is what it costs there, and this is what they do, so this is what we should do. And like, we're always comparing ourselves to the mainland USA. And it's such an unfair comparison. We're a tiny little Caribbean island with only so many resources and a really like rough history of being like of genocide and slavery and like just constantly being diminished. And yet somehow now we're supposed to act like our existence is comparable to any of the 50 states. Like it's not. But everyone always has this like we're comparing like, oh, are we at their level, or is it like this? And well, it's that way over there, and is this the way it is over here? And it's like, I wish that wasn't the standard, like the standard of living, or however the US standard. Why does it have to be our standard? Does it have to be our standard? Can't we decide what our own standard is, instead of constantly trying to reach this thing that's like this goal set for us that we're supposed to be like them, even though we've never been given the equal opportunities or a fair shot, or don't even have the same resources or population or anything. Why are we trying to compare or even reach like that standard? Like it's impossible. And then it just gives us like inferiority complex all the time of like, oh, well, we don't have our shit together. And it's like, well, according to who? Like, who cares? I don't even want to be like them. Like, why are we trying? Entiende? Like, no, we have our own thing, And it's just like, again, an effect of colonization, which trickles to like the personal person, but also like the societal issue of like always being compared to our own colonizer in a way is just like, what are we doing? Why is that the standard?
And I really appreciate you saying that, because I'm here and I'm sharing about the healing, the internal healing, but the micro and the macro are very much connected, right? As within, so without. They're both very much connected. And so if I'm feeling like this too, right, that's happening on a more global kind of societal level, as you're sharing.
Oh, if you want to get a good education, you have to go to a university in the States.
Yeah.
The best and the brightest have to go over there to get an education. And it's like, okay, but like, for what? I don't know. That's how I feel.
I appreciate you saying that, because I think that is real. And as you're saying that, it's just a reminder for me, right, that we too have internalized racism. We've internalized racism. And I know that it looks different in the States than it does here, but it still is here. Because what I keep thinking about is, what is so bad about Puerto Rico to us? Like even my grandma, right, struggled with coming back to Puerto Rico. And it's like, Grandma, what is so bad about Puerto Rico? What is so bad about you? Right? This Puerto Rico is beautiful. We are amazing, amazing people. And I think that many of us have internalized this racism within ourselves. However, like whether it comes to our looks, um, things like I remember I used to straighten my hair all the time. And it's not a knock to anyone who does straighten their hair, right? When you straighten your hair from a place of choice, as opposed to I want to feel like I'm professional. And so I heard that curly hair is not professional, so I have to straighten my hair, right? But who said that? Who said that? But it's just something that we even don't even sometimes question. We just do. Like, just straighten your hair. You go into a boda, entonces ve y hasta el pelo. And so several years ago, part of my reclamation journey is like, I don't want to straighten my hair anymore. I want to just leave it curly. And if I choose to straighten my hair, I'll do that. It'll be from a place of choice, not from a place that feels like my hair is not good enough. And there are so many ways that I think we carry these kind of messages. And it feels important to continue to check in with how these messages exist within us. And then also también how we compare ourselves to one another, right? How we fight, because we fight with each other too. Whether it's, folks that have lived here on the island fighting with each other, but sometimes there's diaspora and folks on the island. How do we create this healing process for more unity so that we can actually fight the folks that we need to be fighting? Because when we are divided, and that's both internally, I'm speaking like within ourselves, even when we are divided internally, there's an African proverb that says, ay, Dios mío, I'm gonna mess it up, and it's my favorite quote. But it says, ay, Dios mío, se me olvidó. But but essentially, it's saying like when there are no enemies within, the outside cannot hurt you. The enemies outside cannot hurt you. When you can befriend yourself within, right? When you can care for yourself, have compassion for yourself, love yourself, take care of yourself, then the outside messages, they don't come in to penetrate as much because you are taking care of yourself. And the same thing is true on a macro level, because when we as a community come together, then we can push back we can push back on oppressive systems. We can push back on colonial metrics, on colonial messages, but we have to be willing to do the work, to heal within, to heal our communities, to have more of these conversations. I know we're on time. I keep getting the 5, the 4, the 3. I want to invite, does anyone have anything that they want to share, ask before we close? ¿Quiere preguntar algo? Okay. Este libro tiene más actividades. Es como un workbook. Los dos tienen actividades, pero que este libro tiene como, porque es un workbook, tiene mucho más, voy a hacer mucho más actividades. Pero es como un deepening. Como el primer libro, you read it and it has some exercises and it'll give like como more of a synopsis, como un análisis. And then this one is like deepening the work from the first one. But you could still read this one not having read this one, porque a veces la gente me pregunta, do you have to have read the first one to read the second? And you don't. You could read this one by itself. But this one is like, va a estar trabajando más. Aquí va a estar leyendo más, aquí va a estar con bolígrafo trabajando más. Quizá llorando más también. ¿Cuál? So with the first one, I talk about, como yo digo, I learned from my clients in treating trauma, even treating is the wrong word because I feel like we are healing trauma, and I'm not the one that, yo no soy la persona que va, tú te sanaste, right? Like it's the person going through the journey. Sí, como la guía, quizá, right? So this is inviting people to heal using four, I'll say, to pay attention to four things: healing their body, ¿verdad? Sanando el cuerpo, sanando la mente, sanando el espíritu, y también either deepening or connecting with ancestors and family and spirit work. And then the fourth one is how to live life more intentionally, and also building community, because we cannot heal by ourselves. We heal with one another. Sí. Como práctico o práctica. With the first one, when it comes to como sanando, sanando con los ancestros, it's inviting you to connect with your ancestors again. And that could be ancestors known and unknown, but just your ancestral practices. O puede ser, it could be something as simple as lighting a candle, or it could be something simple as learning a chant in, if you are Puerto Riqueña, in the Taino language, or whatever language that you want. Just something that helps you connect with your ancestors and your ancestral wisdom. A practice of, como se dice, like a practice of your ancestral lineage, or a practice that you also want to create. No sé si me estoy explicando bien. And it's hard to explain it because it's for people who either are beginning to do ancestral work, like people that maybe have never done ancestral work before, like ancestral healing work, but it doesn't have to be, porque hay gente que tienen su altar y, bregan con los ancestros en esa manera, but it could also be something simple as like lighting a candle for your elders that maybe have passed away and are in the spirit world, right? And maintaining connection with them in that way. So es algo, no es como que tienes que hacerlo en esta manera así. Es como una invitación for you to find out what works for you to connect with your ancestors or your elders that are in the spirit world. No sé si me expliqué mejor ahora. Todavía. Okay. ¿El qué? Perdón. Any ancestor puede ser, una persona en su lineaje, puede ser la naturaleza. No, puede ser el abuelo de los ancestors, puede ser bisabuelo, puede ser tía. Sí, puede. Lo que usted, how I was taught anyway, es ancestro puede ser alguien, en nuestra familia, pero también puede ser naturaleza. Perdón. En la historia, sí. También puede ser como una persona que tiene como un affinity with, que quizá falleció, right? And that feels like an ancestor to you. So es what feels good to you, what feels right to you. Que puede ser su abuelo o no, pero no tiene que ser también una persona, puede ser la naturaleza, sí, cosas así. Ajá, es diferente. No es que no tengo una cuchara. Ajá. Ajá. Sí, para mí, mi trabajo como mezcla los dos. Para mí, mi trabajo mezcla los dos porque yo pienso que es importante en nuestra sanación incluir los ancestros, porque fue también una trauma. Muchas veces, esa trauma que nosotros también cargamos, vienen de ellos también. Entonces, todos sanemos juntos. Y para mí eso es parte, no debería de ser separado a la psicoterapia, pero incluido en el trabajo de psicoterapia. Como yo trabajo, no todo el mundo trabaja así, pero como yo trabajo, eso es importante en esta práctica. Para ser completado, for it to be complete. Otherwise, for me, it feels incomplete when it doesn't include something like a practice of ancestral wisdom. No, él mismo. Entonces, con esos 4, voy a decir, como steps, no son steps, pero enfoque, sí, en esos 4 temas del cuerpo, cuerpo, mente, ancestor wisdom y también intención. Intención y comunidad. Y también quería decir, porque a veces la gente, más con este libro,
Yo tengo que salir.
Ay,
Mira,
gracias,
muchas
Angelina.
gracias a
Ella-
todos, todes.
Thank
Gracias.
you so much. Thank you so much for being here. I know, ella tiene que arrancar. La última cosa que yo iba a decir es que con este libro, a veces la gente no tiene que empezar este libro on page 1. Que a veces la gente dice, mira, yo voy a empezar con el chapter que habla del grief y ellos pueden empezar ahí. Sí, gracias a usted. Gracias por su pregunta. Gracias a ustedes por venir. Muchas gracias.